all know that this is a nonpartisan bill. Republicans, Democrats, independents can all agree that fentanyl is the worst drug scourge we've seen in our history. No one is in favor of fentanyl. However, this bill's intent is to separate the casual user or the addicted user from the dealer. Now, let's analyze the intent versus what is actually being delivered by this bill. We've seen the poll results that said, as the good gentleman from District 14, 86% of the public want something done about mandatory minimums. The worse the disaster, the more hue and cry there is to try and get this thing fixed. Let's examine whether or not we're fixing this problem. And I happen to agree 100% with the good lady from District 18, excuse me. One of the principles of punishment is that the punishment must fit the crime. So we have to separate those that are truly guilty, the drug dealers, the pushers, the manufacturers, the distributors, from those who just get caught up in this. And by this I mean we've also created, through our medical system, a dependence on opioids. If you look at the case of Rush Limbaugh, and I'm not looking at him from a political standpoint, but he's well known, he had back surgery and intense pain that caused him to do doctor shopping, where he got 2,000 OxyContin pills in a 6-month period. That's 10 pills a day to try and relieve his pain. Now, he did go into rehabilitation, which is what we really need to do, and he was not charged with possession or drug dealing, but the opioid situation has created an involuntary class of users that have to get this medication, and they're shut off by their doctors. So that's a separate issue that we have to work on here in the legislature as well. We all agree that the sentence for someone grabbing someone's arm, which is a form of battery, versus killing somebody brutally should have two different sets of punishment. So there's a range of punishment that fit the crime. I sat through 3 hours of public hearings and 2 hours of committee debate last week and the week before, and the one question that was repeatedly asked and never answered was, how much fentanyl are we actually looking at to get us into that first class of offending dealers or users? It was never answered. Well, I have some of the answers. First of all, the National Institutes of Health have indicated that the least detectable amount of fentanyl that can be detected with a lab test or any other test is 0.1 micrograms. Now, all of us who have paid attention in physics and chemistry, and I'm an engineer 2 classes short of a minor in chemistry, understand what milligrams, micrograms, nanograms, and grams are. But I think we need a little bit of clarification to all of us who are going to vote on this bill as to exactly what we're talking about. I have some props on my desk which I'm not allowed to use. A sugar cube weighs 3.6 grams, okay? 4 cubes is 14.4 grams. That is the highest range of the powder or bulk substance that is talked about in this bill for the lowest category of offense. So 4 to 14 grams for bulk usage, powder or compressed, or between 100 and 250 pills. Okay, that's what we're talking about. Now, with the aforementioned minimum detectable amount of fentanyl, if a casual user has 100 pills and you use the test that the NIH says is a detectable amount, he can have 0.85 grams of fentanyl, which if he were to ingest 235 of those pills, he would have a fatal dose. So he could ingest almost the entire amount of the 100 to 250 range and not receive a lethal dose with the least detectable amount. Conversely, the drug dealer who is allowed to have 4 grams to 14 grams, think of 14 grams of pure fentanyl, which we have been told by some of the testifiers is now coming into the states so that the drug dealers can manufacture pills because they have the raw materials 14 grams is 14,000 milligrams. Okay, there's 1,000 milligrams per gram. That is 7,000 lethal doses. Okay, so we compare the worst condition, 7,000 lethal doses, to the casual drug user with 100 pills with the least detectable amount of 0.85. There's a 16,000 to 1 ratio in that one category alone. 16,000. Now, are you trying to tell me with the content of this bill, with that unspecified amount of, quote, the least detectable amount of fentanyl, that we should allow a 16,000 range of fentanyl in the product? It's like saying we're going to give the same sentence to someone who steals $100 versus someone who steals $1.6 million. That's the $16,000 or 16,000 ratio difference between the minimum and the maximum in that first category. I'm not even going to talk about the second categories. Now let's talk about the deadliness of pills or fentanyl or drugs in general. I have on my desk, unfortunately I can't show it to you, it's a prop, a bottle of aspirin. The lethal dose of aspirin for a 150-pound person is 105 pills. So some of our more delicate representatives, no names intended, if they ingested that full bottle of pills, would receive a lethal dose of aspirin, readily available over the counter in any grocery store, any dollar store, any drugstore, commonly available. Now, that minimum amount of fentanyl in the 100 pills that this casual user or addicted person who's coming off of opioids and needs this from the street drugs, he would have to take 235 pills for a fatal dose. So that aspirin, readily available anywhere, is twice as deadly as the least amount detectable pills that will get somebody a 3-year prison sentence. This, to me, is absolutely unacceptable. Now, like I said, nowhere in the bill do we actually talk about the quantity available. It's only the detection technique, which can change with time as well. We might see better ability to detect fentanyl in the future with advanced laboratory techniques that we may not have right now. Without that being specified, it's like saying the speed limit is undetermined because we don't know how to measure it right now with any kind of accuracy. So I'd like to digress a little bit and say that one of the corporal works of mercy is to feed the poor and to visit those in prison, hopefully to bring the word of Christ to them. We should do better and prevent, many of us, most of us have never been able to do that. Some in ministry have, but I'd say let's do one better. Let's prevent some of these people that are going to get caught up in this from going to prison in the first place. All they're going to do in prison is get the $100,000 pass or coursework in criminology, and I don't mean criminal justice. They're going to be trained by the best criminals that money can buy. I realize that this is a emotionally and physically and politically charged issue, and the big elephant in the room is, what am I going to do to tell my constituents that if I vote against this bill, what is the press going to do to crucify us? And what are our constituents going to do, or our political opponents? I know that's weighing heavily on a lot of our minds. I'd like to quote C.S. Lewis. He says, "If you look for truth, you may find comfort in the end. If you look for comfort, you will not get either comfort or truth." When we vote on this bill, I'd like to suggest a unique difference from the way we voted in the past, and it's all legal. I'd like to see a two-part vote. First, vote with your minds, independent of the political impact. I want to see a lot of reds up there, and if we don't have enough reds, to send the bill back for reconsideration and correction of some of these horribly serious problems, then I would certainly understand you changing your vote from red to a green to report to the press or to your constituents the way you want to vote. But let's bear in mind, I don't want to make my decision politically on the backs of innocent kids going to jail. Thank you.